So the idea was that if we got together a global North country that was a front runner in the transition and knew its innovation, and we partnered them together with a global South country that was very serious about starting its decarbonization journey, and it was very ambitious, then this could promote an exchange of ideas, an exchange of learning that would help them both mutually decarbonize. What we focus more is evidence-based climate diplomacy. And what I mean by that is that we're supporting countries that are interested in decarbonizing to come together. So to give you an example, Sweden has a lot of expertise when it comes to green steel, the development and production of green steel. So this is something that can be shared with India for the benefit of their transition and really reduce emissions in a place where we know they're going to grow. So to put this into context a little bit, it's one thing to have the ingredients for a cake, but if you also have the recipe, the know-how, that really makes a difference. And this is exactly what we're trying to achieve when it comes to industry decarbonization. We bring together government ministries, the government agencies, the officials within those bodies, industry representatives, trade associations, and also research institutes to come together to the table and think about how they can come to an agreement on collaborating on pilot and demonstration projects, so physical sites to be built in India to help India decarbonize. I'm Felipe Sanchez. I am a policy fellow at SEI and also country partnerships lead within the Leadership Group for Industry Transition Secretariat, which is hosted at SEI. So if we take this example of steel, the way that you produce steel has been done in the same way for centuries now. So we are, as part of the transition, we have to develop a new way to produce steel that's much greener than the way it's produced right now. When we think about steel in India, there are certain routes that can be taken in India. So one of them is using hydrogen to produce what they call green steel, if you use green hydrogen. So it's how do you come together between all these organizations and partners to develop a hydrogen-based steel-making facility in India to be one of the first-of-a-kind models that shows that it is possible to do this in India and that other organizations might be inspired to follow along. So I would say our work focuses directly on the climate transitions part of the strategy. But I think one thing that's interesting to note from this new strategy is that there's a lot more focus towards making implementation happen and making things happen in practice. So one of the ways we do this is by bringing the evidence and the expertise that we've gathered at SEI and using that to make sure some of these projects can be realized in the real world. We see that the transition is already starting to take place in some parts of the world, the more developed parts of the world. And for me, we really need to see that happen in the developing countries as well. This is where emissions are going to rise. So there's a lot of opportunity growing here. And I think for me, the hope is that LeadIT can spread and support these other emerging markets and developing economies to decarbonize, just as well as the developed North is starting to do so. I think what keeps me motivated is that this is a huge challenge. Like, industry decarbonization is not something that can be solved overnight, and it's not something that can be solved by one person. And if anything, that inspires me or motivates me to really try to bring the right actors to the table that can make a difference. And that means that a little effort from me could have, spillover effects that last, hopefully for decades to come in a good way. So if I'm honest, the biggest challenge is time. It's, the clock is ticking. 2030 isn't that far away. And some of the conversations that we're starting to have now, it should have happened a while ago, yesterday, last year, etc. So we're really trying to make sure we're moving as fast as possible to be able to have some impact that can be measured by 2030, for instance. I think a world in which LeadIT doesn't exist would be one where the developed countries in North America, in Europe, would be able to transition, and they'd transition by themselves, but they would be leaving behind all the countries in the global south, developing countries, emerging markets, where we know there's going to be emission growth, where we know there's a lot of building and basic materials needed, a lot of emissions that come from that. So the efforts that are being taken in the global north would be unraveled by the lack of attention on the global south.